Miami starters were unexpectedly back in action on Wednesday night, helping secure a win versus the Hawks. And Jimmy Butler once again looked absolutely dominant. We break down Jimmy's strong preseason and take your questions on today's live episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to a live edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And the best way to support the show is to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app and join more than 14,000 Locked On Heat lifers by subscribing on YouTube. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are recording this right after the Heat's preseason win over the Hawks. Thanks again to everybody who's tuning in on our live stream here on YouTube immediately after the buzzer. We surprisingly saw in this game, David, the starters on the second night of a back-to-back after seeing them get extended run against the Spurs on Tuesday night. They played into the third quarter in that game. They play into the third quarter in this game for the second straight night. So why do you think Spo did this?
I have no idea. I think it's, if I had to rationalize it, I'd say it's probably just to build chemistry and to continue working on the good habits that they did. Maybe to push the team a little bit further and maybe give them the last preseason game off. That was a theory that you floated when we were talking about that during the game. And it's a very likely possibility that we won't see the starters. You shouldn't see these starters on Friday night when they close out their preseason against the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously, they're a week away from their season opener against the Orlando Magic, so there's plenty of time for them to rest, etc. It feels like a rash decision to play them again on the second night of a back-to-back, but their minutes were limited. They, obviously they didn't play much against the Spurs on Tuesday. They didn't play much against the Hawks today, just 20-something minutes. So I could see the rationale being that it's not going to be particularly tiresome or they're not going to suffer any wear and tear, but it just feels also like an injury risk that was a little unnecessary. But you know what? Given all that, Miami crossed their fingers. They were lucky. Nobody got hurt. Everything seemed fine. Although there was that one play where Nico took a shot to the groin. And at first I thought maybe that might be his wrist or his hand. And then I saw him kind of doubled over and I saw the replay and I was like, okay, well, that's, I can understand the pain of that moment. And at the same time, realize that he's not going to be any kind of long-term injury or anything like that, at least not that we know of, but it shouldn't be.
It was a tough look for Kobe Buffkin too in that moment. The screenshot will not be kind to him, but no. I kind of love this. I think it helps build. Yeah, it helps build up the conditioning for the regular season when back-to-backs are not optional, right? Yeah. I think it paves the way also for the starters not to travel to Memphis for Friday's preseason finale, and that's going to give them 6 days off before the season opener. So back-to-back, smack to smack, you've got 6 days before you have to host the Orlando Magic on October 23rd. So I do wonder if Erik Spoelstra, and I don't think this was the case, I wonder if Spo gave them, though, the option, the players, and said, look, you can either take the second night of the back-to-back off, and then we all travel to Memphis together for Friday, or you play the second night of the back-to-back. You only played 20, 25 minutes against the Spurs. You're only going to play 20, 25 minutes against the Hawks tonight. You do this one, and then you get the rest of the time off to kind of get into your conditioning and rest before the regular season starts. I really liked it. I really liked it because it also just set the tone for what I think Erik Spoelstra wants to accomplish this season, where it's, hey, availability matters. And even in the preseason, this is a game. It's a home game. It's in front of our fans. You're going to play this game. And if this was the last preseason game for the starters, I think the Heat used the preseason to set the tone for what should be a much more business-like, responsible regular season, but also at the same time a fun regular season. They have a fun style of play that I think should keep everybody engaged. So if this was the last time we saw the Miami Heat starters in this preseason, I think they accomplished everything they could have possibly wanted to accomplish in this preseason. This is as successful a preseason as I could remember for the Miami Heat.
Well, was 3-1, right? As far as the record is concerned, but no, Oh yeah, they lost against the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, but who cares about the wins and losses? I'm talking about what I actually saw out there.
Yeah, no. In terms of style of play, it's a great point. I think, 4 games again, preseason. It's easy to dismiss these things, but I think you've been pretty consistent in saying this, and I have to agree. We're seeing the foundation being laid for the style that this team is going to be playing during the regular season, and it's a fun attacking style, pass happy, lots of threes. They once again eclipsed 43 pointers on the night. They were just really solid. Now we are getting a question here, even as we're recording this live, that Jimmy tweaked his ankle. I didn't see it.
I saw it a little bit. It was early in the game. It didn't seem like it was a big deal. And Jimmy Butler, it feels like he tweaks and rolls his ankle a little bit every single game, but I'm not as concerned about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Lower leg injuries, I think, are the norm for him throughout the rest of his life, given everything that we've seen. Like, I mean, I made the point before, and it's worth repeating. Even years ago, he was limping. He's been limping around the locker room pretty consistently, walking like somebody twice his age, much less somebody that's only 35. Oh, technical difficulties here as you're recording this live, and Wes seems to have dropped out, but he's back. There you go. That's all. That's what it's like to record these things live. Lots of fun. At the same time, look, if Jimmy's able to weather the storm and he was in good spirits on the bench, he didn't seem like he was going to the locker room or anything like that. He wasn't iced down. Wasn't any kind of active trainer or anything like that, making sure his ankle was taped up or anything. I'm sure it's fine. And again, to your point, if they do wind up, likely, hopefully, skipping the Friday game against Memphis, that gives them almost a week of rest before the season opener against the Magic. It's a fine place for them to be in. I'm not overly concerned. But again, we're starting to see this team really round into shape in terms of their style of play, and it's a really fun attacking style. And it just, again, 3 players with 3 steals apiece. That was the norm. That was the case yesterday against San Antonio as well. It was the case tonight with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Jaime Jaquez all having
7 steals. Wasn't 7 steals in like the first 10 minutes of this thing? It was crazy.
Yes. They really give the Hawks credit. Their 3-point shooting was electric, and I'm going to have to go back. Yeah. I'm going to have to go back and watch how they got those looks as easily as they did. I know a couple of Trae Young jumpers were from well beyond the arc, and those you can't really defend anyway. But moreover, I'm curious about the other shots that were falling there and why they were able to get such good looks and hit those so consistently. They just might be a hot shooting team, or at least having a hot shooting night.
Some of them were contested. Yeah. It feels like maybe they didn't have the right scouting report on Jalen Johnson, which is a little surprising given that it's a division opponent, but they kind of left him open. They backed off of him a little bit. I would be surprised if they did that again in the regular season, because Jalen Johnson can shoot it. I mean, that guy was awesome for them before he got hurt with like arm and leg injuries, and it basically ruined the rest of his season. But the Heat in the meantime, I mean, like you're mentioning the steals, that's become part and parcel with what this new Miami Heat team does. They force those turnovers, they get out and run. They also take a bunch of threes. Again, I think for the 3rd straight game in a row, 40-plus three-pointers. They took 42 of them in this game. Now, 13 of 42, still a kind of lower percentage than you would want, 31% overall. But of their 90 shot attempts, 42 of them came from beyond the arc. That's almost half. I mean, I think that's exactly where you want to be between that and the shots at the rim. So, in this preseason, I think they've established, at least they've shown what it is that they want to do, the kind of team that they want to be. And through the trials and tribulations of the regular season, there's going to be stress. You're going to be stress tested, and it's going to force maybe certain players to go back to their comfort zones a little bit. Sure. And I'll be really interested to see like what they've learned from the Bahamas, training camp in the Bahamas, and in this preseason. Like, have these good habits taken hold? Like this new way that Erik Spoelstra wants to play. I think we all just assume, hey, take more threes and run, because every team at Media Day says we want to shoot more threes this year, and we want to get out and run, we want to play up tempo. And then you get, even in the preseason, and it immediately changes. And the one thing I was thinking about is, how many times have we heard this about LeBron James teams in the past? Where a LeBron team says we want to take more threes and want to get out and run. And what happens? LeBron gets on the court and he does whatever he wants to do, which is typically slow the game down and pick apart a defense. And I'm watching Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo just gung-ho, full tilt, lean in to this up-tempo style. And they're saying, you know what? This is how we want to play. We're going to do it. And that really gives me confidence in this team's ability to continue playing like this when the regular season starts.
Yeah, I mean, think about past preseasons for this team. First of all, without Jimmy Butler and most of them, he just hasn't been active in playing preseason games. The style of play really didn't reflect anything that we saw consistently over the course of the regular season. It was, obviously very strange lineups and rotations and all that, but certainly nothing like what we've seen over the last few games. Like, this seems to be the way this team wants to play. And I have to say, I think it's going to be the consistent norm moving forward because, well, guess what? They're pretty damn good at it. They force turnovers, they're active defense. They've got their use of hands in order to intercept passing lanes and break up passes and block lob attempts. You pointed out via Twitter how Bam Adebayo has been active in breaking up lob attempts, and he had, I think, a couple in tonight's game. But Tyler Hero, once again, like stealing the ball, anticipating a pass, and having a breakaway dunk early in the first quarter. Like, I don't know how many times we saw that from Tyler last year, but we've seen it a couple games in a row now. And it just looks like this is going to be something that he can incorporate regularly into his offense.
That's going to come up next. We've got some preseason studs that I want to talk about, including maybe the last player I would have thought would be on that list, and he played well tonight. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans. You can start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And it's #1 for a reason. Sometimes you're watching a game, you know what? You're in the middle of it. You want to check out the latest stats. Maybe you want to go see live play-by-play. Well, you can do that and so much more. And you can do it all on the same page where you place your bets. And right now, best of all, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's just $5, and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, but only when you visit FanDuel.com. So go visit FanDuel.com and get started today. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. We want to invite you to the exclusive Locked On Heat Insider community. If you want to join, the link is in the show notes on YouTube, even when you're watching live right now, and it's in your podcast description. If you join, you're going to get a bunch of cool stuff, exclusive content, insider info from me and David, and our reporting on the ground, game notes and stats while we cover these games live, first dibs at mailbag questions, and best of all, the chance to interact with us one-on-one through the subtext messaging platform. This is the best way to become a Locked On Heat lifer, so if you want to join, you can sign up with the link in the show notes. It's free for 14 days. It's $4.99 a month after that 14-day free trial, but you can cancel at any time, no sweat. We won't be offended, but we're really excited for this chance to connect with you all as this regular season gets started here. So, David, I want to do something a little bit different. We're not going to do credit cookies, right? We don't do those until the regular season when the wins actually matter. Right. But I thought we could do some preseason studs from tonight's game. And we got to start with Jimmy Butler. 24 points on 8 of 11 shooting, including making both of the three-pointers that he took. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, all in 21 minutes. And I don't know if we have to credit Chris Paul for this sudden awakening of Jimmy Butler, but between what he did in the last minute of the second quarter against the Spurs and the third quarter minutes that he got against the Spurs, and then basically for the whole first half of this game, again, setting the tone, and I think showing us what, if the first 2 games kind of showed us what the 5-out offense was going to look like generally, sort of like in a paint-by-numbers sort of way,
sure.
I think Jimmy over these last, 2 games-ish has showed us what Jimmy Butler looks like in a 5-out offense. And I got to tell you, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, he's certainly allaying any concerns or fears that you might have had. Look, we were active in pointing out his age, the fact that he didn't play well. There were obviously extenuating factors off the court. We keep making these points, but the reality is that he has looked fantastic in his limited opportunities. The minutes he has played, he has looked great, especially over the last couple games, as you pointed out. And you cannot say enough about the activity he's showing, the tenacity, the physicality. Like, this is not regular season Jimmy Butler. It hasn't been for a few seasons now. And that's okay to point out, despite whatever issues he had last year. We could go back to the season previous when those factors maybe weren't a concern, and Jimmy still wasn't as dominant as he's been over the last couple of preseasons. You want to see it kind of continue to extend into the regular season, but I think we're starting to see him just have a chip on his shoulder, whatever that might be. And again, as you get older in the NBA, there are a lot of times where you need to kind of manufacture these slights in order for you to feel inspired, in order to go through the grind of a regular season and to put up with the abuse that your body takes and just say, you know what, I'm not done yet. I remember a couple seasons ago. I mean, this was 2-3 seasons ago where LeBron James loudly proclaimed, all y'all doubting me, and I could still play at a high level. It's like, who the hell was doubting LeBron James? Nobody said this. Like, but here he was using this that nobody actually said, the straw man that he had created and helped build up and everything else. They put a nice little hat on it. And he was like, no, everybody's saying this. And it's like, okay, whatever it takes to get you out of bed in the morning at age 37, 38 and play at such a high level, if that's what you need, go for it. And I think we're starting to see that with Jimmy. He's got something to prove this season. I'm not sure what it is. Only he knows.
Well,
and I'm not sure if it's real or not.
If I could push back against it, I think it's very real, right? The guy who runs the organization he plays for called him out.
Yeah,
that's not a perceived slight. That's a slight. That is a something that he got hurt in the play-in tournament and did not get an opportunity to play in the playoffs. That's got to be motivation too. Like, I didn't even get a chance to be playoff Jimmy because I was hurt. I don't want to be in the play-in tournament again, and I want to make sure that my team and me aren't dealing with that. And then I can get into the playoffs healthy and show everybody who didn't get to see playoff Jimmy last year that playoff Jimmy perhaps still exists. So I think the motivation has to be very real. And oh, by the way, maybe like $200+ million. That seems to be a lot of motivation for a lot of these NBA players. So I think there's that too. So I love everything about Jimmy Butler, what he's done this preseason. The most preseason games he's ever played in a Miami Heat uniform. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't. If we're doing the whole something nothing segment, it ain't nothing. I know that.
It's something.
Tyler Hero. He's my other stud from tonight. I thought he was excellent. 19 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 3 of 7 from three-point range, 5 rebounds and 5 assists and a steal. You mentioned the steal in the first segment, David. I thought it was awesome, and he was smiling after he stole it. I think he's got like a little rivalry with Jalen Johnson. I don't know if that's out there, like public knowledge. Jalen Johnson from Milwaukee, same area that Tyler Hero's from. I bet they grew up playing against each other. So he steals that pass that was supposed to go to Jalen Johnson. I believe I have that right. And he's kind of smiling at Jalen Johnson, and he's sort of Deion Sanders walking into the end zone, and then dunks it with 2 hands. And that's the second time at least that he's done that in this preseason. So stronger Tyler Hero, also dunking Tyler Hero now. That ain't nothing either. But I love the playmaking that he did. Also, not just the defense, and he actually went up and tried to block a shot. The player that he tried to block scored, but I like the effort there. But I thought the playmaking was really strong from him. He had a number of plays in this game. In the first quarter, he drives to the rim and kind of just like times it out with Bam, where Bam sort of has this like pick and pop situation, and Hero just drives all the way through contact. He's getting to the basket. He's not settling for those floaters anymore. So I just thought it's the most well-rounded Tyler Hero we've ever seen, and it's kind of remarkable that it's this different.
It's a good call out because, as much as I was one to kind of poke fun at the whole muscle watch and everything else like that, because we hear players do this, we heard Tyler do this before. He really does seem to be playing with more physicality and more strength. There was one play in particular, and maybe this is surprising. It wasn't even one in which he scored because it was ruled an offensive foul, although I think it wasn't, where he wound up going up against Dyson Daniels, took the contact, absorbed it, and finished with a basket that I thought was going to be an and one. It was strangely ruled an offensive foul, even though I think Tyler was able to move out of the way and Daniels kind of was shuffling his feet a little bit. But either way, I don't know that we would have seen that from Tyler in the past. I don't think he would have been able to absorb that contact and finish with a hoop. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that, where he's not afraid of using his body more. He's more comfortable. He's older. He's mature. He's stronger physically and mentally. And to see this version of him now, he talked about it after the Spurs game, I believe. He likes the idea of playing off ball more, and he wants to embrace it, and he looks like he's thriving in it. But the playmaking that he's able to do when he does have the ball in his hands, it's a good call because he seems to have patience at the same time. Like the game has, and I'd have to ask them about this because I'm not sure if it's been brought up at any point. It looks like it's slowed down a little bit for him, where he's not kind of forcing it. He's not trying to just pull up quickly, because he doesn't have that kind of space that he might have. He's reading the plays a little bit more precisely and finding guys out in the corner, or whether somebody else is in the dunker spot or something like that. There's just a lot more patience to his game, and he's got the veteran savvy now to maximize the skills that we've seen tantalize us over the last few seasons of his career.
So it's funny that you use the word patience, because I have a note here, And I literally I'll just read you what I wrote here. Hero is still thinking too much about his shot selection. He passed out of an open 3, and he's fortunate that Nico made his 3-pointer. Maybe that's patience. Maybe I think it's so much of, hey, I'm a catch and shoot guy now, where I think Tyler Hero's comfort zone is put the ball on the floor and dribble into a contested 2-pointer, that I think he's thinking about the shot selection a little bit too much. But I think as more time goes on, he'll be more comfortable with his role in the offense. But based on where he is now and the results that we're seeing, that's all encouraging. I don't even mean this as a negative. Like, the fact that he's doing this so quickly in these preseason games and it's working, I think is very encouraging. And I'm actually really excited to see what it looks like when he's even more comfortable in this role in the offense. A few more studs. Let's do these quickly. Haywood Highsmith, this is just a shot-making stud. He was 6 of 8 tonight, 2 of 4 from three-point range. Miami's third leading scorer with 16 points, so he was great. I've got Bam Adebayo here. Not the most productive offensive night, although he did make a 3-pointer, which you always like to see.
About Haywood?
But defensively...
Sorry to interrupt about Haywood, but he's putting the ball down the floor now. Like, he's driving to the rim. Like, he's been doing that consistently over the season. Shot, but also being able to put the ball down and be more of a guard and just kind of attack the rim, and that's a really welcome change. Like, I want to ask him and talk to him about it, because it just seems like this is something that's going to be part of his offensive repertoire moving forward.
Last one is Jaime Jaquez Jr. I actually don't even know what his stat line is, and I don't really care.
Who cares?
6 points, 2 assists, doesn't matter. We'll get into this in a little bit, but I like the playmaking and the bringing the ball up and some of those spin moves and just the footwork and stuff like that he showed. Applying pressure to the basket, I thought all of that was awesome. But I do have one other Jaime Jaquez point, which I think could be pretty transformative for this team. And it's something that I've been actually waiting to see, and we finally saw it in this game. We'll tell you what that is and get to some of your listener questions. So if you're watching on YouTube Live, get those questions in now. We'll try to get to them as many of them as we can after the break here. You're listening to Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hims. Guys, you ever feel like you could use a little boost in the bedroom? I mean, it happens. It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims. You can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. We all don't want to be embarrassed. I totally understand that. You just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. And if it's prescribed, your medication will ship directly to you in discreet packaging for free. So no insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works best for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions do apply. See website for details and important safety information. A subscription is required, and price varies based on product and subscription plan. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. And thanks to everybody who's tuning in live for the post-game show here on YouTube. Best way to support the show. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Leave a comment in the comments section. Leave a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast app. Before we get to some of these listener questions here, David and everybody who's sending them in, thank you very much. Jaime Jaquez, what I wanted to get to there, we saw a new look second unit in this game. So throughout the preseason, we've gotten these first and second unit line shifts. Erik Spoelstra takes out the 5 starters, he puts in 5 backups, and he gets a look at that. Typically, it's been Drew Smith, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Haywood, Highsmith, and Kevin Love. Well, tonight, Erik Spoelstra swapped that up. It was Alec Burks, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez, Haywood, and Thomas Bryant. So Burks over Drew Smith, Bryant over Kevin Love. And what was interesting to me about the second unit was less like Burks and Bryant getting some run here, but more that Jaime Jaquez Jr. was essentially playing point guard of that group. He was the one leading that second unit, bringing the ball up, initiating offense. And I remember saying this to somebody in Media Row during the Spurs game, as people are sort of questioning why is Drew Smith still in these games? Like, what do the Heat see in him? And I totally understand all of that, but I'm like, why not just let Jaime run it? Like, I think aren't we past, it's 2024. Like, aren't we past the point of needing a traditional point guard on the floor all the time if you have multiple players who can initiate offense? And with that lineup between Burks, Duncan, Jaime, like all three of those guys can initiate a significant amount of offense. And you put them together, and I think you have a lot of scoring. I think you have a lot of length. I don't think that Erik Spoelstra is going to play these second units like this in the regular season, but I do think he was using that second unit line shift in this game to just see, okay, what does it look like if we just sort of give Jaime the ball and let him run some offense so that we know that that's at least an option for us?
I think it's a tricky situation because obviously this is the time to test these kinds of opportunities. But during the regular season, when opposing coaches will stagger their lineups, who knows who will be defending Jaime in these types of situations? It's not to say that he's going to be a turnover machine or anything like that, but he just might not look nearly as effective as he has over the course of the preseason when he's clearly playing against backups. I don't know. I think it's still solid enough where you can continue to use Jaime as your de facto point guard and it'll still work. I just don't know if you're going to see staggered lines with either Tyler or Terry kind of running the point, depending on, obviously foul trouble and injury is always going to be a concern. It's always going to shift how Spo utilizes his depth. But I think it's something. It's not nothing. But it's not, I don't know that it's going to be like the norm moving forward. I'm a little hesitant to say that this is probably going to be how the second units are going to be run from this point forward.
Let's get to some listener questions here. This first one comes from Edwin, who writes in, this isn't the topic right now, but you guys talk about how this team has so much depth. Do we consolidate talent? I kind of want to see them package players for picks in this upcoming draft. What do you think, David?
I don't think that's how this team operates. I think they would, again, given the injury concerns, and you hope, knock on wood, that they avoid them this season. But the reality is they've always utilized these guys, and they probably go deeper into their rotation than most teams because of necessity due to injury. And that being the case, I don't think they feel comfortable doing that because they want everybody to get that chance. That's why they play them as often as they do during the regular season, knowing that at some point during a postseason run, you might get your number called somehow. And I don't know which of the players that they're referring to in this question might be consolidated. Like who would you get rid of?
When I think about teams that need a consolidation trade, I think those teams are the teams with a lot of redundancies that have decisions to make where the guys that need to play can't play for whatever reason, whether it be political because of a player in front of them's contract or whatever it might be, or maybe they're so young and ready to play, but that the playing time isn't there. I don't think that's the case for the Miami Heat. I look at this roster, I'm like, I like these players. I don't think anybody that's not playing needs to play, right? Like I don't see like I'm not looking at Pelle Larsson and being like, yeah, summer league and preseason, averaging 7 points per game in the preseason, he needs to get out there. No, the guy was a second round pick, got plenty of time to get him out there. Khalil Ware, same thing, plenty of time to get him out there. I think Thomas Bryant, Kevin Love, like you're not worried about that. You're not making trades. And even if you were to consolidate some of these guys, what are you trading them for? Like, you want picks in this next draft. None of these guys are fetching a first-round pick unless we're talking about, like, the high-end part of the roster. And then you're talking about taking a step back, which the Heat clearly don't want to do. So I don't think that this team has a depth problem. I don't think they have a too many guys problem. I think they have I think they have the guys that they need to play, and then they have young guys that you feel good about that can play next year, 2 years from now, etc. This next question comes from Brandon. Who should be one taking the most shots when the regular season starts? This is a really good question. Who should be taking the most shots? This is not necessarily who's going to average the most points. It could be the same thing. It probably would be the same thing. But who should be taking the most shots?
I think it's going to be Tyler Hero. I think Jimmy will kind of take a measured approach to the regular season. He's going to get his, but he gets his a lot from the free throw line as well. So does not necessarily by using a high usage or a high field goal attempt rate. So I don't think that will be the case. I think it'll probably be Tyler. And given what we've seen, I'm comfortable with that. That's the role he was supposed to play. He was supposed to adopt the team, become the team's leading scorer to kind of give Jimmy and Bam the opportunity to concentrate more on what they do best, which is being complementary scorers and also elite level defenders and playmakers and everything else that they can do so well. And that's perfectly fine. Like, I think if we see a step back from Jimmy and Bam in terms of their overall production, still high production, but obviously not necessarily leading the team. But Tyler winds up evolving to this role, especially if he's playing more off ball. I think that's how it's likely going to play out.
I think there's still a chance that it's Jimmy. He took 11 shots tonight. Terry took 11. Tyler took 12. And Tyler played 3 more minutes, and Terry played 3 more minutes than Jimmy Butler, who was the first starter to get yanked at 21 minutes. Mm-hmm. I think it could still be Jimmy Butler. And I think actually kind of the point I was making earlier, like playing in this 5-out offense makes these shots a little bit easier. Like those, if it's just cuts to the basket over and over and over again, and he's doing that 10 times per game, plus like 3, 4, 5 of the Jimmy Butler post stuff. Yeah. I mean, 15 shots could lead the team this year. 15, 16 shot attempts. I don't think it's going to be a lot. I also think Bam could be that guy, even though we've obviously seen him play more of a facilitator role in the preseason, but especially in this game. But there's a chance that he could be that guy too. It could also be Tyler. It could also be Terry. This is a great question. I have no idea what it's going to be. It feels like the team plays more at Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero's speed now.
Yeah.
And maybe because of that, the ball just finds them more.
Yeah,
but the ball's going to be in Jimmy's hands a lot. It's going to be in Bam's hands a lot. So I still default to one of those guys, Jimmy or Bam, but we'll see. Polly King 305 writes in, if you guys could pluck any role player from previous Heat teams and plug them into this year's team, who would it be? So role player, let's just define that as never having made an all-star game with the Miami Heat. Probably best way to do it.
I don't know.
We need more time to think about this. The first guy that came to mind was PJ Tucker. But in this fast offense, maybe like Lamar Odom.
No. Well, they've got a Lamar Odom. His name is Niko Jovic. I mean, they've already got
better Lamar Odom.
Okay. I guess I could see that. But I look at this team and I know it's going to sound hyperbolic, but what are they missing?
Come on, they're not a perfect team.
No, I don't think that. Like I would say maybe Chris Anderson.
I was just thinking that. Just like a bona fide, the best backup center in the NBA. Put that guy on this team.
Yeah, that could be it. Maybe 2006 Alonzo Mourning. Does that count? Could you qualify him as a role player? Like just a guy who can go in there.
It's tough because he made the All-Star games in his first stint with the Heat, but not in the second stint. So that's tough. But yeah, guys like that, like just a great backup center who, I mean, none of them ever shot threes, so none of them could really necessarily help Bam move to the power forward spot.
Mm.
But I don't know.
James Johnson. Somebody's suggesting that. That's
who?
James Johnson. Somebody suggested James Johnson in their comments here.
Somebody's got a very great memory of James Johnson. Let's move on. Perkus Miley writes in, with Drew Smith healthy, Alec Burks hooping, and Pelle Larsson impressing, is Josh Richardson expendable? Honestly, yes.
Yes.
All right.
Sadly. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of see. I think, again, we talked about this recently. Like Spo will probably default to trying to play his veterans more because he just feels more comfortable in that regard. But certainly Josh is being challenged. But I still think Josh at his best is better than Pelle from what we've seen at his best. I don't know if that's going to be the case throughout the whole season. And I don't know what shape Josh returns to. That's the whole point, is that we haven't seen him play at all. So I don't think they're going to cut him. He's a good, affordable player. And obviously there's a lot of trust and friendship and camaraderie there with a guy like Josh. So I don't think he's not going to be waived or anything. At least I don't perceive that to be the case. I don't know that he's going to be traded either. Yeah.
He might be better than all three of those guys.
Oh yeah.
For the record, like that is 100% in the cards here, but better how much? 10% better? Mm-hmm. Like that he might be the best player out of this group, but he's also expendable because everybody's so kind of close here. But it's not that I would pick all three of those guys over Josh Richardson. I don't think that's what the question is asking either. This one comes from, we're gonna only have time for a couple more here. Seacof writes in, Duncan seems to have problems offensively when he's the prime ball handler in the second unit. I feel he's best when somebody sets him up. I miss the Duncan, Robinson, Bam, Adebayo split actions. Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong at all. No. He shouldn't be running offense. You made this point, I think, very astutely a couple weeks ago, where it's like, if Duncan Robinson's not doing a lot of playmaking, that's a great sign for the Miami Heat in general, because it means they're healthy and their offense is flowing through somebody through a star player who needs to be on the court, who wasn't always on the court last year. I do wonder, once we start seeing how Erik Spoelstra is going to handle the staggering in these rotations, if we do get back to Duncan Robinson and Bam playing together more, because they didn't play together a ton last year. And so putting them on the court more together, getting to those split actions, getting to those dribble handoffs and all that kind of stuff, who wouldn't want to see that?
He's still like, it's great to see Duncan have that kind of versatility where he can do it. But even today, like he was trying to find somebody cutting into the lane. I think it was Thomas Bryant, and he wound up throwing it right into a Hawks player's hands. Like, he's going to make mistakes in that regard, but I still like the optionality of being able to have him make plays for others. And we saw how effective that was last year too, when he was able to put the ball down the floor and kind of change things up and confuse everybody because they were so expecting him to just put up a three, and that was the limitations of his game. So I think we'll still see it, but I think you're absolutely right that
there's a difference between that and the prime ball handler, right? Like him running that second unit versus just attacking as a second ball handler or something like that. We might not have enough time to actually think about this one, but I'll throw it to you anyway. Maybe this is something we do in another show. Do you see a struggling young guy on a different team that makes you think the Heat can fix him? As you're watching preseason basketball, this doesn't have to be like the number one guy, but just any guy. Cade Cunningham?
He's not struggling, is he? Like, he's had a good game. He's had some good games. Like,
it's been all right.
I don't know. I mean, sure, I'd love to have a guy like Cade. I'm a believer in what he can do. So I think, it would require more thought. This might be for an upcoming mailbag before the season starts.
That's a tease if I ever heard one. Thanks to everybody who watched and tuned in live for our post-game show here. Thanks to everybody who made Locked On Heat their first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.